You are my sunshine, my only sunshine.
You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away.
Firefly bridges Whedon's two loves, westerns and sci-fi. He is open about being inspired by the 1939 film Stagecoach, the HBO series Deadwood, and the Civil War novel The Killer Angels by Michael Shara, but doesn't cite any sci-fi sources other than what he doesn't like. He has described Firefly as an attempt to do better than Star Trek, in that Star Trek is deeply unrealistic, with millions of aliens, and doesn't even feel like The Final Frontier or Gene Roddenberry's pitch of A Wagon Train to the Stars. Firefly is more of an actual western, just in space. After setting up this framework deriding Star Trek, Whedon urges everyone to forget about Star Trek and just appreciate Firefly as its own thing that has nothing to do with Star Trek. This is how the fans take it, and just compare it to Star Wars, with Han Solo as the lead instead of Luke. Star Wars, famous for not having millions of aliens. However, I would argue that it has everything to do with Star Trek. That it was not just what he was running away from, but in fact what he was running towards. Throughout Firefly, we see spacesuits that appear to be derivative of the ones seen in Enterprise. I actually first noticed this when I first watched the series, and I thought nothing of it, because obviously shows can be inspired by other shows. That's nothing notable. It is, however, notable in the context that a lot of the plot seems to be mined from Star Trek. The protagonist, Captain Malcolm Mal Reynolds, is tied to the word Serenity. He fought in Serenity Valley, named his ship Serenity. The theme song, from his perspective, references Serenity as an allusion to him metaphorically dying on the battlefield, and both the first episode and movie are named Serenity. Both the name Malcolm and Serenity may come from Enterprise, Season 1, Episode 16, Shuttle Pod 1, where a character named Malcolm has a sexy dream about T'Pol, who says that Malcolm is a Vulcan word meaning serenity.
Malcolm is the Vulcan word for serenity.
There's no place I can be since I found serenity.
It's possible that a line in Firefly Episode 2, The Train Job, suggesting that Mal's name is associated with Latin for bad, was an attempt to cover these tracks. Mal is overtly derivative of John Wayne's character, the Ringo Kid, from Stagecoach as a roguish male lead with suspenders. There are shots where he moves like John Wayne did. However, I think Mal is also derivative of Captain Archer in Enterprise. It's worth noting that Whedon compromised when casting Fillion for the role, having previously wanted a man a few decades older. He ended up telling himself that in the future everyone lives longer and visibly ages slower, making Mal technically in his 50s when he looks like he's in his 30s. Whedon makes it sound like he wanted an older cowboy, but maybe he wanted someone closer to Archer's age, in his 60s. The Alliance is interesting. In the Western Civil War metaphor, it's a stand-in for the Union. In the sci-fi metaphor, it's a stand-in for what Whedon doesn't like about popular sci-fi. Read Star Trek, where everyone has top-grade technology and is living in some kind of utopia. Whedon has derisively compared Alliance ships to the Enterprise, a fancy apartment building in space. In Firefly, the Star Trek utopia is distorted into an exploitative upper class, contrasted with a likable working class. Our takeaway is supposed to be that he hates Star Trek. I think this is an obfuscation, and that the Alliance is actually based on the role of the Vulcans in Enterprise, as an obnoxious, controlling faction, lording fancy technology over our protagonists. Inara, the sex worker who is Mal's love interest, is officially modeled on Dallas from Stagecoach, a sex worker who is Ringo's love interest. However, in her ideological opposition to Mal, supporting the Alliance where he opposes it, I suspect she derives inspiration from T'Pol in her dynamic with Archer. The will they won't they aspect of Mal and Inara's relationship bears some resemblance to the recurring question if T'Pol will remain with her human crew or leave. Throughout the show, we get to know Wash and Zoe as husband and wife. There's a spin on gender roles where Zoe is as derivative of John Wayne as Captain Mal is. She's a shotgun, a warrior woman who has his back. while Wash is more of a house husband. This resembles the Tom Paris-B'Elanna Torres relationship, but without the implication that the woman's aggression is genetically driven, being part Klingon, like Whedon punched it up and made it a bitter feminist statement. Fans have often described the Wash-Zoe relationship as remarkably wholesome, a married couple who are just loving with no trouble in paradise, which is a rarity on TV. It could be the benefit of copying the tag end of a will-they-won't-they relationship after the marriage takes place, and it's just a healthy romance with only a few disagreements. As previously discussed, I find Book derivative of Garak from Deep Space Nine, and River derivative of Kes from Voyager, though she's also mashed up with the Apache woman in Stagecoach. As for Jane, the tough guy, I don't see him as derivative per se. However, his name, aside from a boy named Sue thing, might be a reference to Janeway. In the first episode, Serenity, Inara's status as a licensed sex worker is shown to give her high status in the future society in a flip on her own. Mal jokingly gives her the nickname Ambassador. This may be an allusion to Enterprise Season 1 Episode 23 Fallen Hero, which centers on a Vulcan ambassador. In an early scene of Serenity, Kaylee, a young woman, annoys the older Mal while in a cargo hold. He jokes about wanting to tie her up and leave her in the cargo hold, sounding like an older brother. Their sibling-like dynamic has often been noted. Similarly, Voyager Season 6 Episode 19 Child's Play has a young girl annoy an older boy, Ijib, while in a cargo hold, leading him to jokingly threaten to ship her to the Borg.
If you don't stop asking questions, I'm going to put all of you in a cargo container and transport you back to the Borg.
Sometimes you just want to duct tape her mouth and dump her in the hold for a month.
The Borg is an imperialist, cybernetic hive mind and a recurring villain species throughout the Star Trek spin-offs. It was introduced in The Next Generation as a danger from the far reaches of space, and is mostly associated with that show, but is technically present to a greater degree in Voyager, about a ship lost in their general home territory. The Reavers of Firefly, raping cannibalistic savages, said to be men who suffered nihilistic madness when they entered the far reaches of space, may derive some inspiration. Officially, the Reavers are inspired by the role of the Apaches in Stagecoach. The Firefly movie codes them as such, with a war paint motif, and some of their body mods, and there is a general idea of them representing a dangerous savagery in an untamed land, contrasted with the dangerous cops in the orderly urban settlements. But they're also distinctly inhuman in behavior. Many have commented on their derivation of zombies in the movie, and that's accurate when they're present in person and surging like a zombie horde. However, as a spacefaring race with inhuman priorities, they more resemble the Borg. The episode Serenity has a plot point about Mal and Wash noticing a Reaver ship in the area, terrifying everyone, but concluding that the Reavers won't necessarily bother the crew if they don't act like prey. Wash will just maintain course, and the Reaver ship will only attack them if they're in the mood. The scene that follows is a tense, proximity-based encounter that's completely silent. The Reavers pass by, and everyone breathes a sigh of relief. That doesn't translate well to either a colonial wagon train meeting natives, which would involve some measure of diplomacy, even of the saber-rattling kind, or to zombies, which would attack on sight, but it does translate well to the starship Voyager encountering a Borg cube in a system they're passing through. The Borg would not necessarily attack a single starship if they have other plans in the area, but are immensely intimidating. During this scene, Inara is seen with a mysterious syringe. Most fans assume that it's to kill herself if the ship is boarded. However, according to series writer Tim Minear, a later episode would have revealed that the syringe turns her into a biological weapon where anyone who has sex with her would die. As a sex worker, this would presumably be useful for assassinations. One episode would involve her shuttle being boarded by Reavers, and she would be assumed dead, but found alive and surrounded by their bodies, the victim of a gang rape who defeated them in the end. This appears to be a sexually violent variant of Ichib's backstory, revealed in Child's Play, as a genetically engineered biological weapon, designed to be assimilated by the Borg, who spread a deadly disease to the collective, as is seen in his introduction in Voyager Season 6 Episode 16 Collective, surrounding him with their bodies, at least in his general area. Series finale, Season 7, Episode 25 to 26, Endgame, shows this in action, committed by a female character, Janeway from the future, to strike a major blow against the collective when assimilated on screen in a penetrative act. If Whedon watched this, we can see how he might have been inspired to rewrite it as a rape revenge kind of thing, with elements from each story. Firefly Episode 2, The Train Job, concerns a crime lord named Niska, who is obsessed with the idea of reputation, knowing Mal's reputation and maintaining his own. This might derive inspiration from Enterprise Season 1, Episode 24, Desert Crossing, in which a stand-in for Osama bin Laden emphasizes knowing Archer by reputation.
You have a reputation for being fair, a man of great integrity.
You have reputation. How come Reynolds gets it done is the talk.
Well, glad to hear that.
Firefly Episode 3 Bushwhacked, which is about the Reavers as a general concept, carries a little bit of a Borg similarity, and the idea that being attacked by a Reaver and left alive can transform one into a Reaver. In this case, due to nihilistic madness upon witnessing horrors, rather than the injection of nanites. The discovery of one such victim on a derelict ship full of bodies hung upside down that is accessed by people in spacesuits that look like that, including a crew member who has a fear associated with putting one on, causing crew distress and musing about implications, before the arrival of a threatening ship, bears a significant resemblance to Enterprise Season 1 Episode 3 Fight or Flight, in which the same basic plot happens. They board an alien derelict while Hoshi has a phobia about the suit, find the bodies, are disturbed, muse about it, try to take action based on what they saw, and suddenly a threatening ship arrives. Fight or Flight bears some derivation from Deep Space Nine Season 5 Episode 2 The Ship, which also involves the investigation of a derelict ship in which the crew's bodies are found hanging from the ceiling. But of course, Star Trek borrows from itself all the time. It is more forgivable within the same franchise. We can see Fight or Flight taking some of the basic beats and making them scarier, and then Bushwhacked doing the same. In Fight or Flight, the bodies are sighted by Hoshi, a Japanese woman, who screams upon their detection. In Bushwhacked, River zeroes on them with her Kess-like psychic powers, and later screams like Hoshi when she senses the man who turned into a Reaver, taking a Reaver-like action. Meanwhile, her brother Simon resembles Hoshi in being apprehensive over wearing a spacesuit. With the last name Tam, it's possible that Whedon initially intended River and Simon to be Chinese. It wouldn't be the only time that he'd write characters as Asian and then cast white actors. Dollhouse has Mark Shepard play a character named Tanaka. In the audio commentary, Whedon jokes that Tanaka must be adopted. When called out for the lack of Asian representation in Firefly, despite heavy inspiration from Asian cultures, Whedon offered that actress Summer Glau looked kinda Asian, apparently misunderstanding the point as about being how the show looks, as opposed to not giving Asian actors work while using Asian cultures as a superficial aesthetic. Technically, Glau is mixed race and part Asian, but he didn't know that. If he designed River and Simon as Asian, and possibly casted Glau for looking Asian, it's possible that he plotted Bushwhacked based on their resemblance to Hoshi in his mind's eye, prior to casting. While Hoshi's fear of putting on the suit is about claustrophobia, Simon's fear of putting on the suit is about fear of space, as is tied into the theme about nihilism. Both Simon's fear of space and Mal's musings on nihilism resemble Neelix's musings on his fear of space and night, which is labeled as
Nihilophobia, the fear of nothingness.
Some of the bits where they're looking around the ship without suits on, and River perceiving the psychic imprint as ghosts, resembles bits in Enterprise Season 1 Episode 20 Oasis.
What are you saying? The ship was haunted?
What is it?
It's a ghost.
As for its opening scene, a futuristic game of basketball in the cargo hold, it bears a resemblance to a game of catch in a low-gravity cargo hold that serves as the opening scene of Enterprise Season 1 Episode 10 Fortunate Son. Firefly Episode 4 Shindig has members of the crew playing futuristic poker for chores that they don't have to do. Likewise, Collective has members of the crew playing actual poker for chores they don't have to do. The game is interrupted by River lashing out at Blue Sun labels, leaving several cans of food unlabeled. The book describes these as mystery meals, the same phrase used to describe unappetizing food in Fortunate Son.
All we got left now are hydroponics and NutriPacks. What we used to call them? Mystery meals.
Have a few mystery meals.
In addition to taking Book to the Alliance being like The Wire, the part of SAFE where Inara must argue with Mal to take that option resembles Enterprise Season 1 Episode 8 Breaking the Ice, in which T'Pol must argue with Archer to accept Vanek's help, the Vulcans being like the Alliance.
There is another option. Captain Vanek.
I'd rather leave him out of this.
You can save them, or you can let your pride stand in the way.
You know where you can find what you need. I'm talking about medical facilities.
That's not an option.
It doesn't matter what you want. He's dying. And we need a doctor now.
The part of Safe that has Hillfolk abduct Simon because the people need a doctor, forcing him to consider that he could make a decent life there despite not having a choice, resembles Voyager Season 7 Episode 5 Critical Care about the doctor being stolen and sold to an alien hospital because they need a holographic doctor, forcing him to consider that he could make a decent life there despite not having a choice.
May I remind you I'm being illegally detained? Or hasn't the rule of law reached this society yet?
Yes. Seems like a lovely little community of kidnappers.
The part of Safe that follows, where the Hillfolk turn out to be violently superstitious and try to burn Simon and River at the stake, feels like a mix of Deep Space Nine Season 2 Episode 15 Paradise, about a reclusive society of low technological people who engage in a witch hunt that threatens our heroes.
You don't like it here, do you?
It's not what I'm used to.
It wasn't easy for us at first either.
Sometimes life takes you places you weren't expecting to go.
Life didn't bring us here, those men did.
And Voyager Season 6 Episode 17 Spirit Folk, about more or less the same thing, just in the holodeck. Cisco standing up for the people being oppressed, opposing the bad leader, and accepting a punishment of a hot box, resembles Simon standing up for River after she identifies the bad leader and joining her in the punishment.
This is lunacy. You're supposed to be the teacher here.
The intensity of the witch hunt resembles the theme in Spirit Folk, and the threat of being burned at the stake is also present.
I say we tie them up to the lamppost in the square and show them how spirit folk were dealt with in the olden days.
This girl reads minds and spins falsehoods. She's a witch and we must purge the devil from her. With fire!
Stay back!
Fears you got here just in the nick of time. What does that make us? Big damn heroes, sir.
I was never the biggest fan of Safe. Though it has moments I like, it always seemed a bit unfocused, clunky. First we're on the planet with the town, then the ship is in space taking Book to the Alliance, where Inara arguing with Mal never really struck me as reasonable, and then the Hillfolk take Simon to their community, and it's about Simon wondering where his place is, and then it's the Crucible. There's a series of flashbacks that tries to tie it together into Simon looking for a place to belong, but it's a mess. Well, maybe the reason it's so messy is Whedon was trying to mash up 5 different Star Trek episodes he liked and couldn't find a coherent theme.
We referred to this as The Crucible in Space, and more actually a high school production of The Crucible in Space.
Firefly Episode 6, Our Mrs. Reynolds, depicts a malicious woman, Saffron, seducing people, stealing a shuttle, and sending the ship toward a hazard associated with junker traders. This resembles the overall plot of the Voyager episode Alice, depicting a malicious female figure as the incarnation of a living shuttle, associated with a junker trader, seducing people, compelling one to steal the shuttle, and sending it towards a hazard.
Just you, me, and the stars. Now we're alone, just us and the stars.
The jokes early on in the episode, where everyone giggles about Mal accidentally getting married, resemble the jokes in Enterprise Season 1 Episode 5 Unexpected, where everyone giggles about Tucker accidentally getting pregnant.
You think we could keep this between the 4 of us?
You got it.
We need all personnel in the cargo bay.
Oh, I said wash.
Captain, everyone should have a chance to congratulate you.
While a joke about Jane being creepy and giving his weapon a girl's name might be an in-joke, referencing a principal character in Enterprise Season 1 Episode 6, Terra Nova.
We're pretty sure this woman's name was Vera Fuller.
She has a name.
So does this. I call it Vera.
The moment where the episode shifts in tone, when Saffron kisses Mal, he passes out, and she makes a pithy quip, feels like a tightened version of a similar scene in Enterprise Season 1 Episode 25, 2 Days and 2 Nights, where a woman seduces and drugs Archer, he passes out, and she gives a quip that is much worse written.
I'm gonna check out now.
Oh.
Night, sweetie.
A scene in Janestown, where Jane describes the beer Mother's Milk as nutritious, if not appetizing, resembles a scene in Voyager Season 4, Episode 9, Year of Hell Part 2, where Neelix likewise describes their drink as nutritious, but not appetizing.
I call it the elixir of endurance. It's loaded with amino acids, carbohydrates, all the nutrients necessary for the crew.
They call it mother's milk. All the protein, vitamins, and carbs of your grandma's best turkey dinner.
And the bad guy spending a prison sentence in a hot box again recalls Paradise. Firefly Episode 8, Out of Gas, resembles the Voyager episodes Season 4, Episode 8, Year of Hell Part 1, Season 4, Episode 25-1, Season 5, Episode 23, 1159, Alice, and Season 7, Episode 19, Author, and Enterprise episodes Fortunate Son, Shuttle Pod 1, and Season 1, Episode 19, Acquisition. It starts with the crew enjoying a conversation with Book telling funny stories. Kaylee asks Simon to tell his own funny story about being a doctor, and he struggles to do so until Jane interrupts. This resembles 1159, where the crew enjoys a conversation, the doctor tries to take over and struggles to be entertaining until 7 interrupts. Kaylee makes Simon a cake from processed protein, similar to the mystery meals discussed in Fortunate Son, and there's a plot device with a loss of breathable air, similar to a hull breach, also in Fortunate Son. Mal argues with Wash over what to do to fix the ship, which is pointed out to be a waste of oxygen, similar to Malcolm and Tripp's arguments in Shuttle Pod 1.
You want me to guess? Look hard at those stars, find something that looks familiar, and tell me which way to go.
You know, I'm not a doctor, but I'm pretty sure you use up a lot more oxygen when you shout like that!
Get a suit on and go outside on the side of the boat.
What? Wave my arms around?
Wave your arms around.
Fine!
Hey! Look what you two think you're doing. You use up all the air.
The damaged ship is darkened, and it's agreed that the crew will take shuttles away, while the captain effectively goes down with the ship, similar to Year of Hell.
Besides, you know the adage. Captain goes down with the ship.
Mel, this isn't the ancient sea. You don't have to go down with your ship.
Musing about dying alone.
One Borg cannot survive.
I am an individual. I will survive alone.
No, you will die alone.
Mel, you don't have to die alone.
Everybody dies alone.
Mal was the only person left on board the ship. And he suffers delusions/flashbacks.
7, help me.
She'll be with you for the rest of your life.
As lights dim, the computer repeats a warning.
Warning. Propulsion system failure in progress.
Life support failure. Check oxygen levels at once.
A ship suddenly shows up where he never expects it to, and a trade for a part occurs that suddenly turns hostile.
I'm Tragus Lotharic. I'm in need of a microfusion chamber. Would you consider a trade?
You have what you asked for, now leave.
I thought we could keep each other company for a while.
I feel like maybe we can do business.
You take a look around, decide what you think is fair. Already decided.
Like with 7 in her hallucinations in 1. In the flashbacks, we see Mel shopping for ships, while there's a theme of falling in love at first sight versus the idea that the object of your affection has to grow on you, as Wash must with Zoe, which is also a theme of Alice. Wash has a mustache in the flashbacks, like Tom in the Doctor's Hollow novel and Author. Zoe repeats that something about Wash bothers her, similar to B'Elanna staring at Tom's mustache in the Hollow novel. The flashback about hiring Jane shows that he was a villain who got Mel and Zoe at gunpoint, and then Mel turned him against his teammates by sowing discontent about his treatment, similar to Archer sowing discontent with the Ferengi captor in Acquisition.
You must get a bigger percentage than your crewmates.
Actually, I get the smallest.
7% standard.
Okay. Zoe, I'm paying you too much.
Why? What does she get?
Knock it off!
The episode ends extremely similarly to Shuttle Pod 1, with a character named Malcolm waking up in a hospital bed surrounded by crew, turning to look at someone on the bed beside him, and someone speaking in a slow, even tone. Out of Gas handles the apparent mashup of 8 Star Trek episodes much better than Safe does with 5. The difference here is that there's one main plot thread made from 3 thematically similar episodes, a few short gags are borrowed from 2 others, and then everything else is only present in discrete flashback scenes. If you're gonna take from someone else's shows, that's the way to do it. Firefly Episode 9 Ariel has dialogue about 3 futuristic medical devices, pulmonary stimulators, cardiac infusers, and cortical electrodes. The Next Generation Season 5, Episode 25, The Inner Light, introduces cortical stimulators into the Star Trek continuity, and they're used a lot more in Deep Space Nine and Voyager. It's the go-to medical device and gets name-dropped a lot.
Cortical stimulators.
Ready the cortical stimulator.
Cortical stimulator.
Pulmonary stimulators and cardiac
infusers. What about cortical electrodes?
I totally see this list as a reference, altered just enough to be distinct while still alluding to Star Trek. Also a scene where a Fed betrays Jane, he moves forward aggressively, and the Feds hit him with a sonic weapon, feels like a more dramatic version of a scene in Enterprise Season 1 Episode 21 Detained, where a warden basically betrays Archer, he moves forward stridently, and is hit with an electric baton. Firefly Episode 10 War Stories has Niska abduct Mal and Wash. He takes them to a dark torture chamber with shafts of light streaming through holes in the walls, where they are left to panic, hands tied behind their backs, with blindfolds on. Mal keeps disciplined, while Wash babbles. This is extremely similar to Enterprise Season 1 Episode 15 Shadows of Pajem, in which Space Hamas abducts Archer and T'Pol, taking them to a dark cell with shafts of light streaming through holes in the walls, hands tied in front of them, hoods over their heads, and T'Pol keeps disciplined while Archer babbles. During this War Stories scene, Mal tells Wash they must keep their heads. In response, Wash makes a joke about the double meaning. Similarly, Collective has the Borg abduct members of the crew and take them to a dark assimilation chamber where Chakotay tells Tom that they must keep their heads.
We're not drones yet. If we keep our heads, maybe we can find a way out.
We just gotta keep our heads.
Right, keep our heads.
That way we'll be able to, keep our heads.
We can see where Whedon could have built onto the moment and mashed it up with something similar. When Mal keeps Wash's mind focused during torture by arguing with him, it feels like a more entertaining version of Archer keeping Trip's mind focused during a survival situation by asking him questions and making him do word games in Desert Crossing. Later in War Stories, Inara goes to a politician to get help through official channels, but it fails. In a deleted scene in the original script, the politician confesses to her that the government knows about Niska but can't move against him. The crew launches a rescue effort on their own. Similarly, in Voyager Season 6 Episode 15, Sunkatsi, a criminal gladiatorial enterprise abducts Seven and Tuvok. Neelix goes to talk to a politician to get help through official channels, but it fails. The politician knows about the Enterprise and tolerates it. The crew launches a rescue effort on their own. The climax of War Stories involves an extended joke that ends with 3 people firing upon the same man. This feels like an exaggeration of a beat in Shadows of Pajem, in which 3 laser beams take out the same man. At the end of War Stories, Simon reattaches Mal's ear and tells him not to fiddle with it. Similar to Dr. Phlox telling Hoshi not to touch alien prosthetics in Enterprise Season 1 Episode 9 Civilization. Firefly Episode 11 Trash has Saffron return for a lighthearted heist plot, in which comedy is derived from her predictable behavior as a callous thief playing roles, while people around her fall for her lies. Mal has an emotional heart-to-heart with her, sits next to her, and talks about the possibility of her changing her ways. She takes his weapon and gets out of his grasp. She is eventually caught and turned over to the authorities. Similarly, Voyager Season 6 Episode 21, Live Fast and Prosper, has a lighthearted plot about Dalla, leader of a ring of con artists, in which comedy is derived from her predictable behavior as a callous thief, playing roles while people around her fall for her lies. Neelix has an emotional heart-to-heart with her, sits next to her, and talks about the possibility of her changing her ways. She takes his weapon and gets out of his grasp. She is eventually caught and turned over to the authorities. We can see how Whedon could have been inspired to improve on the scene, where the criminal woman takes the sympathetic man's weapon, where instead of it being a whole separate action after the heart-to-heart, it's a visible movement made during the heart-to-heart.
I suppose that you think I could change too.
Stranger things have happened.
Can people ever change?
Depends on the person, I'm guessing. pain of this fades away, you'll just go back to being what you are.
The message, despite keeping Tudyk from doing the Vulcan salute, has a few seeming derivations. The basic plot about taking on a passenger who, at one point, fakes a serious medical condition and causes the ship to be attacked by aggressors who want the passenger for themselves, matches the plot of Fallen Hero. Tracy just fakes his death early on, instead of the Vulcan ambassador pretending to be in surgery when the attackers board the ship. There's even fussing about a message.
What if we could get a message through? Any way you can get a message through the interference. We do get a message through.
We may have gotten a message through.
This is a message for Zoe and for Malcolm Reynolds.
A stupid message of mine, and...
During a flashback, Tracy jokes that during academy training, he got a badge in the mistake that Zoe just criticized him for, followed up by the humorous reveal that Mal is even worse than him. This bears a resemblance to the banter between Archer and Malcolm in Enterprise Season 1, Episode 18, Rogue Planet, in which it's revealed that the subordinate got one more badge than the captain as an Eagle Scout. Mal generally being less capable than his subordinates is a joke throughout the whole series. The message also has a scene where everyone is huddled on the bridge of the parked ship while the rumblings of detonated missiles are heard, very similar to a scene in Deep Space Nine's The Ship, which River prophesied in a manner similar to Sisko prophesying the attack in Call to Arms. Firefly Episode 14, Objects in Space, has Inara talk to Mal about her plans to leave the ship, similar to T'Pol talking to Archer about being reassigned in Shadows of P'Jem. At the end, River pretends to surrender herself to a bounty hunter, delivering a heartfelt speech about how it's best for everyone. This is similar to Voyager Season 5, Episode 20, Think Tank, in which 7 of 9 pretends to surrender to George from Seinfeld, and insists that it's best for everyone. River also pretends to incorporeally possess the spaceship, and speaks as it, like the living ship in Alice. Early on in the movie Serenity, a class is taught outside, similar to the class in Enterprise Season 1, Episode 1 and 2, Broken Bow. Soon after, a part flies off of the ship, similar to a moment in Year of Hell, a dramatic scene in which the ship opens their cargo bay door to scoop up a speeding vehicle to enable its escape from an enemy, resembles a dramatic scene in Voyager Season 6, Episode 8, One Small Step, in which the ship opens their shuttle bay doors in advance while rushing to rescue a speeding shuttle to enable its escape from a spatial anomaly. River's mind-controlled trigger from a commercial broadcast resembles Voyager Season 7, Episode 4, Repression, depicting Tuvok's mind-controlled trigger from a video letter. The scenes where the captains review the evidence are similarly staged.
A letter from his son.
We found another signal embedded in the message. A letter within a letter.
The Odie bar?
Subliminal. It's a subliminal message Broadwave to trigger.
Mystery Universe, a creepy guy with a sex doll living a solitary existence on a moon with a transmission reception station allowing him to watch the world around him with minimal interaction, resembles Tarquin in Enterprise Season 3, Episode 6, Exile, a creepy guy living a solitary existence on a planet with a series of captured women who he treats like pets, with telepathic abilities allowing him to see the world around him with minimal interaction. Even Mystery Universe's setup of mini monitors stacked together resembles a visual in Exile. Throughout Enterprise, Archer commonly hands off command of the ship to Tucker or T'Pol with the line, "The ship is yours," or "The bridge is yours." In Serenity, Mal delivers that first line to Zoe, and Whedon seemingly punches it up by having her joke like she thinks that Mal is actually giving her ownership of the ship.
Ship is yours.
Zoe's ship is yours. If anything happens to me, or if you don't hear from me within the hour, you take the ship, and you come and you rescue me.
Risk my ship?
I mean it.
The operative insisting that Mal can't make him angry resembles Vulcan emotional discipline in general. The character suddenly discussing poetry resembles Archer suddenly discussing poetry in Rogue Planet.
Do you know any poetry?
You mean besides there was a young lady from Ipswich?
Albatross was a ship's good luck till some idiot killed it. Yes, I've read a poem. Try not to faint.
The way Inara stuns the operative with a flash grenade, disguised as incense, resembles the way that O'Brien stuns Garrick with a phaser, disguised as surrendered arms, in Deep Space Nine Season 5, Episode 24, Impak Nor. The discovery of Miranda, as a planet experimented on by the government, that resulted in people just relaxing and dying in place, visually resembles Acquisition, where the Ferengi gas the ship and everyone falls asleep in place. As previously noted, River sensing what happened resembles Kes sensing what happened to the alien civilization and time and again. The film climax, only officially indicated to draw from the climax of Stagecoach, bears a strong resemblance to the climax of Year of Hell Part 2, where the main villain must repeat in order to target the enemy, with his subordinates reluctant to obey.
Target the other vessels. Obrist. I said target the vessels.
Target the Reavers. Target the Reavers. Target everyone. Somebody fire!
A shot of one ship crashing into another ship, and then a shot of the chaos inside. The way the good guys in the film race to the enemy fleet while being chased by Reavers also resembles the climax of Endgame, in which the good guys race to the friendly fleet while being chased by the Borg. The dramatic exit from the Borg transwarp aperture, in which ships suddenly appear in normal space, is visually similar to the exit of the Storm in Serenity. The cargo hold, where the crew holds up to keep the Reavers at bay, is staged similarly to the shootout at the end of Fortunate Son. Mel pointing out he has succeeded in angering the operative resembles Enterprise Season 1 Episode 17 Fusion, in which Archer angers the Vulcan to reveal he is a danger to the crew.
What's wrong, Talaris? Getting angry?
I haven't made you angry, have I?
All in all, Firefly is extraordinarily derivative of Star Trek, mostly Enterprise, with a dash of Deep Space Nine and Voyager. It would be one thing if Whedon were open about being inspired by Star Trek and then just inserting some nerdy references to it in the show that, if you're nerdy like him, you might be able to spot. I mean, being a fan of Star Trek is basically synonymous with being a nerd, at least in the eyes of the public, and it's kind of a stereotype for a reason. We love Star Trek in nerdy circles. So yeah, that would be fine. But in every instance where Star Trek comes up, Joss Whedon speaks about it disdainfully. It's just a silly show. So Firefly is cast as this much better show because it's not like Star Trek, in theory. He talks about, like, in Star Trek, you've got all these aliens, but in Firefly, it's realistic. There's only humans. And of course, this ignores the fact that he totally delves into goofy characters and makeup in Buffy, but it's also just kind of a silly show with cowboys in space, and getting pretentious about it doesn't really make sense. He just projects this idea that he's better because he's not into Star Trek. But I think it can be shown with reasonable certainty that a large amount of Firefly was in fact inspired by Star Trek, and he has obfuscated this detail and explicitly said that he's not a Trekker, as a means presumably of making it look like he's a much better storyteller than he actually is.